What's up, Steelers Nation? Things are heating up in Pittsburgh, and not just because training camp is around the corner. One of the biggest legends in franchise history, the iconic Terry Bradshaw, just lit a fire under the entire organization, with some brutally honest comments that have fans talking across the league. The topic? Kenny Pickett, the young quarterback once viewed as the future of the Steelers, and how, in Bradshaw's words, the team completely failed him. Now let's rewind a bit. The Steelers picked Kenny Pickett in the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft, with hopes that the kid from Pitt would follow in the footsteps of Ben Roethlisberger and lead the black and gold into a new era. On paper, it all made sense. Pickett had the hometown connection, the leadership skills, and flashes of real talent. But 2 seasons later, he was gone, traded. Not because he didn't care or wasn't working hard, but because things just never seemed to click in Pittsburgh. And if you listen to what Bradshaw said this week, it wasn't all on Pickett. Bradshaw didn't sugarcoat anything during his appearance on the Morning Mayhem show. He came out swinging, saying the Steelers never gave Pickett a fair shot. According to him, the team didn't protect him, didn't build around him, and essentially set him up to fail. In Bradshaw's own words, they didn't get him an offensive line. They wanted to run the football, but they didn't have an offensive line. They couldn't protect and they didn't have weapons. He had no wide receivers to speak of. That kind of criticism coming from a Hall of Famer and a guy who knows what it takes to win in Pittsburgh hit hard. But let's unpack that a little. The part about the offensive line, there's definitely some truth there. The Steelers have struggled for years to rebuild their O-line into something that could consistently open up the run game or keep a young quarterback upright. Kenny was running for his life way too often, and that kind of pressure can stunt the growth of even the most talented signal caller. Bradshaw's frustration on that front seems justified. Where things get a bit murky is the part about not having any receivers. Pickett may not have had a Pro Bowl level arsenal, but he wasn't exactly throwing to ghosts out there either. Deontay Johnson was on the roster, and George Pickens came in during the same draft as Kenny, flashing serious playmaking ability. So when Bradshaw says Pickett had no wide receivers to speak of, that might be a stretch. But maybe his point wasn't that the receivers were bad. Maybe he meant that the offensive system didn't know how to properly use the talent it had. And that brings us to a name that's become a bit of a lightning rod for criticism in Pittsburgh: Matt Canada. The offensive coordinator stuck around way longer than most fans wanted, and his schemes, or lack thereof, have been a constant source of frustration. The offense looked outdated, predictable, and totally mismatched with the skill sets of the players on the field. Bradshaw didn't hold back on that either, essentially saying that Canada's system failed to bring the best out of Pickett. And to be fair, it's hard to argue otherwise. The offense was near the bottom of the league in too many key categories, and it didn't seem like the coaching staff was doing much to adjust or evolve. Bradshaw even went so far as to say that the team's entire approach to developing Pickett was flawed from the start. And then you throw a kid in there for 2 years, he said, and you got an offense that doesn't fit and doesn't work. And they can't run because their offensive line's not even good enough for a run blocking team. And therefore they say, Pickett was a failure. He wasn't a failure. The Steelers were a failure. That's not just a hot take. That's a full-on indictment of the way the organization handled this young quarterback. And let's not ignore the other part of Bradshaw's comments, the indirect but very clear criticism of Mike Tomlin. While he never said Tomlin's name outright, it's obvious who was in the crosshairs. After all, Tomlin is the man steering the ship. He's the one who kept Matt Canada in charge of the offense, who oversaw Pickett's development, and who ultimately failed to create a system that could support a young quarterback trying to find his place. Bradshaw even mocked the idea that the Steelers were pursuing Aaron Rodgers at one point, calling it a joke. That shows you just how little faith he has in the decision-making process coming from the top. Kenny Pickett, for his part, didn't sit around waiting for things to improve. After the Steelers signed veteran Russell Wilson to lead the team in 2024, Pickett felt completely betrayed. He saw the writing on the wall and demanded a trade, not out of spite, but out of a desire to find a team that actually believed in him. He was sent to the Philadelphia Eagles, where he played backup, but got to experience something magical, a Super Bowl win. Even though he wasn't the starter, having that championship ring gave his young career a bit of shine. Then came another twist in the tale. In the 2025 offseason, Pickett was traded once again, this time to the Cleveland Browns. That's right, from black and gold to midnight brown and orange. It's a crowded quarterback room in Cleveland, no doubt, but Pickett enters with a real chance to fight for the starting job. And maybe, just maybe, prove once and for all that he wasn't the problem in Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, the Steelers are at a crossroads. The pressure on Mike Tomlin is higher than ever. The franchise hasn't won a playoff game since the 2016 season, and fans are growing restless. For a team with such a rich history of success, mediocrity isn't just disappointing. It's unacceptable. Terry Bradshaw's comments didn't just stir the pot. They brought long-simmering frustrations to the surface. Fans who once gave Tomlin the benefit of the doubt are starting to question whether the franchise is truly headed in the right direction. As the 2025 season approaches, the spotlight will be brighter than ever on the Steelers. Sideline. Tomlin's every move will be scrutinized. The offense must show life. The quarterback position must stabilize. And above all, the team has to win. Not just stay competitive, not just scrape into the playoffs. They need meaningful victories that remind the football world that the Steelers are still a force to be reckoned with. Because if they don't, the narrative will only get louder. That the Steelers let another young talent slip away. That leadership at the top has lost its edge. And that maybe, just maybe, Terry Bradshaw was right all along. There's something poetic about how the Kenny Pickett story has unfolded so far. Especially when viewed through the lens of Steelers fans who had such high hopes just a couple of years ago. From the moment he was drafted, there was a wave of excitement. He wasn't just some outsider brought in to fix things. He was one of their own. A Pitt Panther who had played his college ball at Heinz Field, literally sharing the same turf as the Steelers. That connection made people believe in him before. He even threw a professional pass. But as the games wore on and the offense continued to struggle, the excitement turned into frustration and the support began to fade. And now, with Pickett no longer wearing black and gold, people are starting to question whether the franchise let go too soon. What Bradshaw did with his fiery comments was force everyone to take a hard look at how the Steelers operate today. This is not the same dominant franchise that once won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. It's not even the same team that went to the big game in 2008 and 2010. Somewhere along the way, the identity got blurry. Sure, Tomlin has never had a losing season. That's the stat that always gets thrown around. But is that enough? Is barely staying above .500 something to hang your hat on in Pittsburgh, a city that breeds football greatness? That's the real issue Bradshaw is pointing to. The Steelers, once known for being a model of consistency and excellence, now feel like a team stuck in neutral. And when it came time to develop the next quarterback, they didn't provide the structure, the patience, or the offensive vision that young players need to grow. Instead, it felt rushed. Pickett was thrown into the fire with a coordinator who didn't have a dynamic game plan, behind an offensive line that couldn't hold its ground, and with a system that just didn't evolve. You could see it in the way Pickett played. He had moments, flashes of mobility, toughness, leadership, but there was never any rhythm, never any sense that he was in control of an offense that understood his strengths. Every game felt like a grind, like he was trying to survive more than thrive. And when a team decided to sign Russell Wilson, a veteran clearly brought in to stabilize the position, it sent a loud message. They didn't believe Kenny Pickett was the answer. But what if the answer wasn't about the quarterback at all? What if it was about the environment around him? That's what Bradshaw is really asking. You can't evaluate a young quarterback in a vacuum. Context matters, coaching matters, supporting talent matters. And when you fail to get those things, right, you end up with situations like this. A player full of potential leaving town before he even got a real chance to show who he could be. And while Pickett moves on with his career, now with the Browns, the Steelers are left to pick up the pieces and try to make the most of their current roster. Russell Wilson, for all his experience, is not a long-term solution. He's a bridge, maybe even a temporary patch. And if the team doesn't address the deeper structural issues in coaching, in offensive strategy, in personnel decisions, then history could repeat itself with the next guy too. Fans are paying attention now more than ever. The mystique. Now, once surrounded, Mike Tomlin is beginning to wear thin. He's still a respected figure, no doubt, but the goodwill he built up over the years is starting to erode. The playoff drought looms large. The offensive identity is still unclear, and the decision to let a young quarterback walk without seeing what he could become in a better system, that's going to be hard to live down if Pickett finds success. Elsewhere, imagine if he wins the starting job in Cleveland. Imagine if he leads them to meaningful wins, or even a playoff run. Suddenly the narrative flips entirely. The team that drafted him couldn't figure out how to use him. Another franchise did, and that kind of scenario haunts front offices. It's not just about losing games. It's about losing faith from your fan base, losing your edge in player development, and ultimately losing the trust of your locker room. That's why Bradshaw's words carry so much weight. He's not just some old-timer venting frustration. He's someone who understands what greatness in Pittsburgh looks like. He lived it. He led it. So when he says the organization has lost its way, people listen. And maybe, just maybe, he's saying what a lot of fans have been thinking but didn't want to admit out loud. The Steelers have always prided themselves on being a stable franchise. They don't make knee-jerk decisions. They don't fire coaches every other year. But that kind of loyalty only works if the system is still producing results. Otherwise, it becomes stagnation disguised as patience. That's the tightrope Tomlin and the front office are walking now. They need to show the fan base and the league that they still know how to build a winner, that they can recognize and develop talent, that they can adapt to the modern NFL, where offenses are dynamic, aggressive, and ever-changing. Because if they can't, then Bradshaw's assessment will echo for years. That it wasn't Kenny Pickett who failed, it was the Steelers who failed. Him. And that kind of indictment doesn't fade easily, especially in a city where the bar has always been set at excellence. The upcoming season isn't just about wins and losses anymore. It's about proving that the Pittsburgh Steelers are still the Pittsburgh Steelers, a franchise that knows how to compete at the highest level. The time for excuses is over. The time for results is now. All eyes are on the field, all ears are tuned in. And the legacy of this era, for better or worse, is about to be written. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers are swirling around Pittsburgh as rumors intensify about a potential blockbuster signing that could shake up the NFL landscape. Could Aaron Rodgers be on his way to the Steelers? Over the past few days, multiple sources have hinted at a sudden surge of activity in Pittsburgh surrounding the veteran quarterback, suggesting the Steelers might be positioning themselves to bring Rodgers aboard. The buzz began when insiders reported Rodgers was seen in Pittsburgh, sparking speculation that the legendary QB is exploring a fresh chapter far from Green Bay. Rodgers, a multiple-time MVP and Super Bowl champion, has long been a subject of trade rumors, but the prospect of him joining the Steelers has caught fans and analysts off guard. Pittsburgh, traditionally known for its powerhouse offenses led by Ben Roethlisberger in years past, could be gearing up for a major rebuild at the quarterback position, and Rodgers could be the centerpiece. Why would Rodgers consider Pittsburgh? For one, the Steelers have a rich football history and a fiercely loyal fan base eager for a winning quarterback to restore glory. The team's offensive weapons remain potent, and with a solid defense and a strong organizational culture, Rodgers could find an environment that matches his competitive fire. Moreover, the move might offer Rodgers a fresh start after some tumultuous seasons in Green Bay, where injuries and team struggles have clouded his legacy. On the flip side, the Steelers would be taking a calculated risk on an aging star, but one who could instantly elevate their offense and provide a mentor for younger players. The idea of Rodgers mentoring a young Steelers roster while leading them back to playoff contention is a tantalizing possibility. The buzz suggests negotiations could be heating up behind closed doors, with both sides weighing the benefits of a potentially groundbreaking deal. Of course, nothing is confirmed yet, and the NFL offseason is notoriously fertile ground for speculation. Yet the image of Rodgers donning the black and gold uniform has already ignited the imaginations of Steelers fans craving a championship run. Could this be the start of a new dynasty in Pittsburgh, or just another rumor swirling in the winds of NFL free agency? Only time will tell, but for now, all eyes remain fixed on Pittsburgh. where a possible Rodgers signing might just rewrite the Steelers' future. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.